Fraud affects businesses of all sizes. Did you know that most fraud is committed by your own employees and leadership? In this video, I will review 5 common employee frauds, and I will give you tips to help you identify fraud occurring in your company. We'll be talking about what to do if your business is already a victim of fraud. I will show you how to deal with the fraudsters. I will show you ways to get your money back. So let's go. I've said it before, but we'll stress it again. It takes on average 16 months for a company to identify that fraud has occurred. Think about that. It doesn't matter if you're a large business or a small business. Most businesses, if they are found, go on for a very, very long time. We work with companies large and small to implement fraud prevention programs. If you're watching this video, your prevention program probably wasn't effective, or you don't have one yet. We'll talk about fraud prevention in another video, so make sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified about our fraud prevention and all other videos we post in the future. Today, though, we are focusing on how to identify if fraud is currently happening in your company. Fraudsters, they go to great lengths to conceal their frauds. In the beginning, they start small. They test the systems and processes of a business. As the fraud continues, the frequency and/or dollar amount increases, and covered tracks start to surface due to laziness or effective internal controls. But nonetheless, the longer the fraud is being committed, the larger the fraud generally grows. Where someone committing a fraud will work very hard to cover their tracks in the beginning, the longer their actions go unchecked, the more likely they are to be less cautious or even careless. This is why most frauds take on average 16 months to be uncovered. Employee fraud. How to identify if there is a potential problem. Number 1, payroll. Payroll fraud is one of the most common types of fraud we see in large and small businesses. In fact, it affects 1 out of 4 businesses affected by fraud. Payroll fraud occurs in many ways. The most common are ghost employees, unauthorized bonuses, unaccounted for holiday pay. If you are manually writing checks or use a payroll service, here are some techniques to identify red flags that will help you reduce your exposure. Have somebody independent of payables reconcile active and non-active employees. Make sure that deductions are being taken from all employees. Compare timesheets, attendant lists to each employee being paid. And number 4, do a quick sanity check. Do changes from prior periods make sense? Should payroll amounts increase? Who approved overtime or vacation pay? These checks should be done on a regular basis. How often? Well, that depends on the size of the business and how often employees turn over. If you're using a payroll service, ask them what fraud controls they have in place and what kind of analysis has been done or can be done on your account to protect you. A quick check for any employee who does not have source deductions held back, or where 2 employee paychecks are being electronically deposited into the same account, may indicate that you have a problem. Number 2, vendor kickbacks. Do employees dealing with procurement receive incentives, gifts, or kickbacks from your vendors? Do you even know? Could you even know? In your business, you're likely trying to increase revenue and decrease costs. If your buyers are receiving gifts from vendors, they may be more inclined to choose a vendor who might not necessarily be the right fit or choice for your business. The challenge is detecting this when there may not be any paperwork to find. A lot of the time, what we need to do on our side when we go looking for it is it really comes from email review and texting reviews. For those in procurement position, though, keep a lookout for the following red flags. Extravagant vacations or vacation pictures with vendors in it. Monitoring social media accounts is a great way to uncover this. Unusual consumer consumption that is beyond the employee's means based on their salaries. For example, sports cars, cottages, expensive trips. Again, monitoring social media accounts is a great way to uncover this. Long lunches during periods before and right after vendor negotiations. You need to ask yourself, who are they preparing? Who needs to get updated? Why is it taking so long afterwards to make a decision? An increase in costs or quantities purchased from a vendor beyond what would normally be purchased for the company is a red flag. Number 3, no vacations. Although a red flag, more than a fraud, it is low-hanging fruit to identify, which might indicate a bigger problem than an unrested employee. Do any of your employees not take vacation during the year? Do you know? Yes, you may have dedicated employees, but failing to take a vacation may indicate that your employee is worried about someone else doing their job. But why? Well, at least at times, if someone else did their job, they might, and quite often do, identify an issue. Number 4, stolen data. Have you recently lost customers and can't explain why? Have you lost deals because a competitor underbid you by a few dollars? Almost as if they knew your pricing strategy? Employees realize that your intellectual property, customer and vendor lists are valuable. Before going to your competition or starting their own competing business, your employees may be selling or copying your data and planning on or are already using it for their personal benefit. Number 5, expense fraud. Expense fraud is rampant and spares no business. Not-for-profit, government, or for-profit, it likely exists in more than 95% of operating businesses. The question becomes, what is tolerable? And what can we investigate within our budget? How much can we audit? Examples of expense fraud include submitting an invoice more than once, submitting personal expenses as business-related, overstating mileage, fictitious or altered invoices, returning items after they've been submitted for reimbursement. If your business is already suspicious that one or more of your employees might be committing fraud, you need to know what to do with them and what kind of investigation is required. I have performed hundreds of investigations. My reports are used by the police in civil court, mediation, by key stakeholders needing information to make decisions going forward, and by insurers. Do you know what you need? I have helped companies recover tens of millions of dollars from investigations. As an expert, I can investigate and prepare a court-ready report, whether civil or criminal. Your insurer might want an independent investigation and quantification of loss performed. I prepare reports that help recover your losses. I investigate allegations of fraud and report back my independent findings, observations, and at times, recommendations for going forward. With this in mind, let's dive into building an action plan for the identification and remediation of potential fraud in your business. Here is a 5-step level plan for dealing with fraud allegations. Number 1, before confronting an employee and accusing them of committing fraud, you need to have performed an investigation and you need to be able to support the allegations. I was once engaged to investigate a treasurer of 25 years who was overseeing a large association with many members. The association had conducted their own investigation, confronted the treasurer, and accused him of committing fraud and suspended him without pay. I was brought in to confirm their investigation. All they wanted me to do was review the 10 examples, write a report that confirmed their suspicion. However, after I did my work, it was clear that there may have been sloppy accounting, but not fraud. The line between fraud, which has criminal meaning, and sloppiness can be thin. Taking action prior to completing a proper investigation can open up your organization, your business, to lawsuits that could have been avoided. In this case, the association took action first and investigated later. The employee rightfully sued and won. If you believe that there might be fraud going on in your company, consider the following process to protect yourself. But please keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. This is based on my experience. Please contact your lawyer prior to taking any action. So the first is, without a doubt, contact legal counsel. Have an investigation plan. Either have a team pre-assigned internally, or identify who would be doing external investigations if they arise. Put the employee you think may have committed fraud on paid leave while the investigation is in process. Wait until the investigation is complete before making any accusations, and definitely any public accusations. Number 2, fidelity and fraud insurance. I can't tell you how many times I stress fidelity and fraud insurance. It is key to most businesses in terms of minimizing exposure. If you aren't sure what insurance you have, go check. If you do have coverage, you need to let your insurer know as soon as possible that there might be a problem. Most insurance policies will have a clause that they must be notified within a certain time period, or any claim or any future claim would be void. I will also tell you other avenues for recovery at the end of this video. Number 3, the inner circle. You need to decide who is going to do the investigation and how. Things that you need to consider. Should your investigation be conducted internally or externally? Will your key stakeholders, like your investors, the board of directors, parent company, the owners, are they going to demand an external report, an independent investigation? Are they going to be satisfied with one that was produced internally? What I've seen from my experience is when an investigation is conducted internally, the internal team is never the hero. If the report finds that they found nothing, then the question is what's being hidden. If the report says they found something, then the follow-up question is, well, if they found this, what else is going on? Depending on the size of your company, the status, public or private, if private, the number of shareholders also matters and needs to be considered. And the scope and scale of the fraud will help determine whether an external investigation is required and even warranted. Does the loss support an investigation? At times, the loss is not the main driver for the investigation. For example, a not-for-profit group receiving government or private funding might have to investigate and report on all allegations. If an investigation is conducted internally, do your staff have the right experience? And do they have the time to do the work? What supporting documentation is available? Do you need to review laptops, mobile devices, or other equipment? Much like a crime scene, if you or your team review a computer without the right training, you might destroy, delete, or even miss crucial evidence. If you decide to have an external investigation, do you know who to contact? Can your auditors perform the investigation? Likely not. Do you know how much an investigation will cost? What will you do with your findings? Will a report be provided to the police for criminal charges? Will it be used for civil recovery? Or is it just meant for internal purposes and decision making? Who else will have access to the report? And it's not just who will have official access, but is there a chance that our report will be put on the internet and made public? How long will it take to perform the investigation? Number 4, perform an autopsy during an investigation. Make sure to identify what failed, what controls did not work, what allowed the fraud to occur. All too often, we see controls and processes that are documented, but never followed and never implemented. Number 5, each instance of fraud, each company, and each situation are different. When a fraud is suspected or identified, you must decide where you want to allocate your budget. At times, your key stakeholders are going to demand an investigation and an independent investigation. But if you already know what happened, how much was taken, and by who, you may want to consider spending the budget on your business going forward, rather than investigating and investing additional funds to help mourn your past loss. Instead of investigating the past, consider controls such as training, whistleblower programs, surprise audits, and enforcing mandatory vacations. Vacation is also a way for your employees to re-energize. No company will ever be immune from fraud. It doesn't matter if you're a small company or the largest in the world. Now, other sources of recovery aside from an insurer include the employee who committed the fraud, your financial institution, your auditors, the fraudster's new business, or potentially the business they moved to. To identify and minimize your loss as a victim of fraud, regularly review, revise, and most importantly, test your internal controls. Separate duties. For example, split the division of purchasing and procurement from the person who reconciles the monthly banking statements. Why? Because otherwise nobody is going to see in that circuit what is actually going on. People would be reconciling their own disbursements. Conduct random audits. Rotate job duties. It not only helps identify problems, but also enhances your employee's job. Make it mandatory to take vacations and use the opportunities to validate your processes and your internal controls. Have your bank set up positive pay system. They will be able to stop payments when the payee, dollar amount, or check number have been altered. At uncoverfraud.com, we investigate allegations of fraud, quantify your exposure, and help recover lost funds. We submit complaints to the police and address your key stakeholders. Remember, the numbers tell the story. It's not a question of will fraud happen to our company. It's a question of when fraud occurs or when it surfaces. Is our company prepared to deal with it and to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Can we navigate through the issue? My name is David Melamed, and to find out more about me and the services we offer, please visit uncoverfraud.com. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe.